Good Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. A little studio maintenance going on, so we will be joining you from a room adjoining the studio for this week. Plenty of Browns to talk about a little bit later. Jacob Roach from Dawg Pound Daily will join us. We'll talk plenty of Browns. We will welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com in just a few minutes. But first, let's set the stage for some of the developments over the weekend concerning the Deshaun Watson situation. So Albert Breer was on the Rich Eisen show. They talked about when to expect any word on a potential suspension for Deshaun Watson.
I think they'd feel a little bit more comfortable once they get past that pre-trial discovery deadline because, I mean, it's not going to be complete. I don't think it's ever going to be complete, this year because it looks like the lawsuits are going to carry into 2023. But at least then you feel comfortable that you have, I would say, a good percentage of the information that's going to come out. So I felt all along they'd let that deadline pass, and then at some point in July we get a decision. I think the question now becomes what's happened over the last week and a half. Does that make you skittish enough where you're like, oh, God, what else is going to happen? Is something really significant going to happen in August or September? That's why my feeling is they're still going to, whatever the punishment is, the sanctions are, they're probably going to leave things pretty open-ended in saying the commissioner reserves the right to the commissioner reserves the right to alter the punishment in some way if new information becomes available. I still don't think that they want to use the commissioner's exempt list, but it remains a lever out there that Roger could pull if he really does feel uncomfortable and he wants to put Deshaun on paid leave.
So the commissioner's exempt list would make him ineligible to play, but he would still get paid, hence the paid leave. The discovery deadline currently is at the end of June, last day of June, so that's why they expect that potential punishment to hit in July. Albert Breer, same show with Rich Eisen, talked about could it be a season-long suspension for Deshaun Watson?
Certainly the idea of giving him a full year suspension. I think this is something that's probably been discussed in the league office by now. I mean, the NFL could then couch it as, well, we sat Deshaun Deshaun had a de facto year off last year, and now, we're going to suspend him for a year. So, you add up the time away from the game, and it's equivalent to what MLB did to Trevor Bauer.
Well, I mean, it's not just, and it's interesting you mentioned the Trevor Bauer name there, but it's not just the court of public opinion. It's the extra and soon to be more civil cases coming. It's not just that also. It's also Deshaun Watson's inability to explain himself in a coherent manner or a convincing manner in the court of public opinion. It just keeps mounting. And his also desire, as he says, to clear his name and how long that will take.
Right.
That this is something that is an open-ended question, not just for the rest of this calendar year, but could go into next calendar year as well.
And the other thing that has been mentioned is the Players Association has hired a really well-known lawyer in Jeffrey Kelser as outside counsel to argue any type of suspension that the NFL imposes. Also, Charles Robinson from Yahoo wrote an article late last week that came out and quoted investigating officer in many of these crimes, saying she felt that a crime had been committed. Over the weekend, Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg, speaking on the Mike Meltzer podcast on Sparks and the Law, talked about that deposition of the investigating officer who said she felt that a crime was committed in the Deshaun Watson situation.
Well, opinion is not evidence, both fortunately and unfortunately. Evidence is evidence, and the grand jury based their decision on what they thought about the evidence and not the opinion of the investigator. I told you that there's been a lot of change in the way these crimes are investigated, a lot more sensitivity after ages of insensitivity toward sex crimes in law enforcement. And so while it's a good thing that investigators are more sensitive, we are expected to be objective. Our system presumes the innocence of the defendant. And I think Unfortunately for the officer, she's passionate, but she has displayed some bias in her deposition testimony that may give her trouble as a witness from here on out.
And with that, let's welcome in Tim Bielik. And Tim, what Kim Ogg is referring to is the investigating officer that was quoted in that deposition said they presume that when a sex crime victim comes to them, they presume that the person they are accusing is guilty. And that's what she means by that bias.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, again, this is just continues to just kind of be a web of so many things that are going on, you know, just from the legal situation with Deshaun Watson. I mean, he basically kind of made it clear on Tuesday when he spoke to the media about how he wants to clear his name. However, that's going to play out, you know, in the weeks, months, maybe even years to come. It's going to be fascinating. And the thing I think we have to remember about this suspension is, I mean, this is the first time it's being done by a third party with the former U.S. District Judge Sue L. Robinson serving as the disciplinary officer who's going to ultimately make the initial decision before appeal. So there's no track record. I mean, the NFL can obviously suggest things. The NFLPA can counter those. You talked about, you know, the NFLPA hiring Jeffrey Kessler to kind of help out with, you know, Deshaun Watson and whatever, but all this stuff. But we don't know what she's going to do because honestly, I don't even think she knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows. It's just going to play out over the next few weeks. I think it's pretty clear, you know, to expect Deshaun Watson to get suspended based on everything that's been out there. How long it's going to be, I mean, who knows? I mean, certainly at least a good portion of the season, I think you can expect. I'd be the only thing that would really stun me completely is if there was no suspension. I think that would be really the only outcome that would completely catch me personally off guard. I just think, you know, with everything that's going on, there's going to be suspension. How long, you know, it's going to come down to just, you know, obviously what evidence the NFL investigation has found as far as, you know, whether Watson violated the personal conduct policy.
All right, let's move on. So let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one, if Jacoby Brissett is your starting quarterback, what do you expect?
Yeah, this is Randy McKissack, longtime Browns fan, frequent caller. So my question is about why is everybody so convinced that the Browns can't have a successful season if Deshaun Watson is suspended for the entire year? Jacoby Brissett can do a good job. I'm just looking at the history of winning Super Bowl quarterbacks. You had Trent Dilfer, you had Joe Flacco. He had guys like Brad Johnson. You had Jim McMahon. You know, there's other quarterbacks out here that won Super Bowls, was the quarterback when their team won the Super Bowl. They did not have a significant role. They were not super quarterbacks, but they had great defenses, great offensive lines, great special teams, great running game. So all the other elements were there. So I'm not giving up on the Browns not being able to have a great season. I'm not going to say they can win the Super Bowl, but I am going to say they can have a good season with Jacoby Brissett. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thanks for the comment. Bye.
And as always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, it comes down to definition. I don't know that I think the Browns defense is going to be really good. I don't know that they're going to be 85 Bears, that was Jim McMahon, or Ravens with Ray Lewis, that was Trent Dilfer type of good. But the Browns can certainly be in the playoff hunt, I think, with Jacoby Brissett as their quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, certainly 9 wins, 10 wins possible with Jacoby Brissett because we saw just how bad the Browns were a year ago with all the problems Baker Mayfield had turning the football over. And, you know, if we know anything about Jacoby Brissett, he's not going to turn the football over. I mean, in his career, 60 games played, he's only got 17 career interceptions and have about 1,200 passes. So the guy doesn't turn the football over, but also only 36 touchdowns. So you're getting lower risk, lower reward quarterback. So maybe better in some ways than what the Browns got out of Baker last season with his shoulder injury. As far as obviously protecting the football, but you may not get the explosive highlights that you can get out of Baker, the big plays that are available because of his arm. because of the things that he has the potential to do when healthy. But I think Super Bowl is really out of the question unless Deshaun Watson plays the majority of the season. I mean, I know obviously everybody's going to bring up Trent Dilfer winning Super Bowl, Brad Johnson winning Super Bowl, but those were different times. I mean, I know the call of Rob Joe Flacco, but Joe Flacco, we have to remember in those playoffs, those postseasons was red hot, that he was playing as well as any quarterback in football at that time. So I think you have to have a quarterback who's playing really well, combined with a really good team. You have to have all those things clicking to get to the Super Bowl. And with Jacoby Brissett, I don't think you have a high enough ceiling to get there this year.
You think it's fair enough to say, though, that Kevin Stefanski pretty much knows more what he's going to get from Jacoby Brissett than what he got from Baker Mayfield? In other words, the problem with Baker was the highs were really high, the lows were really low. Jacoby's highs and lows are going to be much tighter together.
Yeah, I think I mean every coach craves consistency. Every coach wants to know when he steps on the sideline what he's going to get from his players. And I think with Jacoby Brissett, obviously, no one should be expecting 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. Nobody should be expecting that, but expect a guy who could complete some passes, occasionally hit some big throws. And we also have to remember that in Kevin Stefanski's offense, this is the same type of zone read system that can help quarterbacks out, that can make life a little easier for him. And also Jacoby is going to get to play with probably a better supporting cast than he's had at any point of his career. So maybe he plays a little better than we've seen at times. I'm not going to go on and say that he's going to be, top 10 starter. Maybe he's just solid, a guy that's not going to lose you games, maybe not going to win you a bunch of games, but you would hope that all he does is kind of be a game manager and let the rest of the team with the talent it has find ways to win.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, a question about Deshaun Watson's guaranteed contract. Plus, we'll hear more from Harris County District Attorney Tim Dawg. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Deshaun Watson.
Hi, this is Ken from Snellville, Georgia, a Browns fan forever. Remember him drafting Jimmy Brown. My question is about Deshaun Watson's contract. More explicitly, if Watson on his fully guaranteed contract get injured and can't play the game, what happens to the Browns and that money? Are they covered by insurance for an injury problem? Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, injury, it depends on the severity of the injury. Yeah, when you write a $230 million contract, you take out a pretty hefty premium to guard against like an injury that is career-threatening. But if it's a season, you're on the hook for a good portion of that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, the price you pay when you fully guarantee a $230 million contract. You're kind of always rolling the dice in the NFL just because, players are going to get injured. There's going to be a lot of players that have season-ending injuries every season. It just happens. It's unavoidable. It's the kind of thing you have to deal with. So for the Browns' perspective, I imagine, obviously torn ACL or something like that, they're still going to be on the hook for all the money. If it's a significant injury, I'm talking maybe multiple seasons or even career-ending, I would assume, like most contracts, there's language worked in where, a team can't, like, if the player's never going to play again, you would maybe help him with his medical situation or whatever, but can't guarantee that money against the salary cap or whatever things go on in that situation. So again, every player's got that risk every time you step on the field, just because, you got players flying around 20 some miles an hour, full speed. They're just looking to deliver big hits, especially when you're the quarterback. It's always part of that game when you have these contracts. So, I mean, they paid him that money, and I'm sure they're prepared to, pay it, regardless of the situation, again, unless it's some really, really, really severe injury where he can't play again.
Yeah, and they're on the hook either way against the cap, if that's what your question is. Any type of insurance that would do that, if it were career-ending, the language in that would protect the Browns financially. It's still going to take the cap hit, though, as well. All right, Kim Ogg, Harris County District Attorney. That's the county that Houston is in. She was on the Mike Metzler podcast, Sports and the Law, about the grand jury returning a no bill, deciding not to go forward with criminal investigation and criminal prosecution, and what exactly that means.
We respect our justice process. I love the law. It's designed to get to the truth. That's really what people want. I don't think as a culture we can live with injustice. Remember, a grand jury no bill is not an exoneration. People, even when they clear the criminal justice system, often face accountability and repercussions in other parts of our legal system. And so I think to determine whether justice was done in this case, you're going to have to wait and see how it all comes out on the civil side of things, and then through the NFL on the administrative side of things. And people will then determine whether that's justice.
And again, the important part in that, Tim, is the no bill. So the decision not to go ahead with criminal charges does not mean that it was a not guilty. There wasn't enough there to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, and when it comes to criminal case, it's what you can prove and what sets these things forward. And obviously, those two grand juries, they didn't have enough evidence to go forward and pursue criminal charges. Doesn't mean, doesn't mean he's off the hook. There's still these civil cases that are hanging over him. I know 24 and possibly more, depending on what comes on the next few weeks. But I mean, obviously, with this criminal situation cleared up is why teams like the Browns, were more willing to go out and try and trade for Deshaun Watson. I think that was pretty obvious. And I think because of that, maybe it's more likely that he sees the field, while the civil stuff kind of plays itself out. I mean, we don't know if there's going to be settlement that happens. Maybe, I don't know if something would happen after the NFL decides, on a suspension. If they talk with Deshaun Watson, like, we'll do this. If you agree to settle and do all this sort of thing, just kind of, put this away. But we'll have to see how this plays out. Again, it could be done in 2 months, or it could take 2, 3, who knows how many years before this all really gets resolved. But it's clear it's not ending quite yet.
All right, so Brown's biggest weaknesses ahead of training camp. This is according to the Bleacher Report. First, uncertainty at quarterback. Number 2, not enough proven wide receivers. And 3, lack of an impact players on the interior defensive line. When you look at those, Tim, the biggest concern obviously has to be the uncertainty at quarterback. The others, they've got so many young guys. The thought process from the front office is 1 or 2 of these young guys are going to reach up and grab the opportunity that sits in front of them. The quarterback situation is obviously a huge concern.
Absolutely, and we're probably not going to get, any resolvement of this quarterback situation until possibly training camp, whenever the NFL comes out with the news of however long the suspension for Deshaun Watson is going to be. Again, if it's, even if it's just 4 to 6 games, it's a decent chunk of the season, especially considering he's going to need some time to kind of shake off the rust and get used to full NFL game speed again after not playing all of 2021. As for the other two, I mean, again, like you kind of said, they got a lot of youth that kind of needs to pop. And what we've seen so far in the offseason program is David Bell has impressed everybody. I think they said he's only maybe dropped 1 pass, from what the media, the people who cover the team closely have seen in practice, that he's only really dropped 1 pass. I mean, I know it's mini camp. I know obviously in that situation, you're not going to get hit and you're not, necessarily going full speed, but it's a good sign of the hands that David Bell has. And when it comes to defensive tackle, I think everybody knows it's a weakness of the team. But consider also the Browns have made investment in that position each of the last 3 drafts. Jordan Elliott was a 3rd-round pick in 2020. Tommy Togiai, a 4th-round pick in 2021. Perion Winfrey, a 4th-round pick this year. I'd say that one of those guys is going to pop. One of those guys is going to flash. The question is who it's going to be. I kind of think Tommy Togiai maybe kind of it seems like to me is a bit underrated in this battle. I think we saw what he did in college. I'm not going to write defensive tackles off just because they don't show much as rookies, because they're probably not going to show much as rookies. They have to get stronger because, they're 22, 23 years old. They're going up against full-grown men who are, in their late 20s, early 30s, that have gone up against bigger, stronger defensive tackles. Of course they're not going to be ready for it. It takes time to really see what you've got there. So, I mean, the Browns has got to hope, at least it seems like from what's happened right now, that they're kind of waiting on one of those 3 guys to really flash and take a spot.
Yeah, and you know what? The front office is betting on their coaching staff to develop guys they identified and drafted. So that's kind of the thought process, and that's what good teams generally do. All right, this is from the Bleacher Report again. Players who need to be traded to break out in 2022. So they say defensive tackle Jerry Tillery from the Chargers, and they say the Browns are the best fit. Results from Tillery came slowly, logged just 47 combined tackles over his first 2 seasons. 25-year-old, much better last year, 51 tackles to go with 4.5 sacks. Also on that list, Dearness Johnson, running back for the Browns, best fit, the Atlanta Falcons. Everybody with the Browns knows that when given the opportunity in a really talented backfield, Dearness Johnson has done nothing but perform. Let's go back to Tillery. Do you think Tillery is a good fit with the Browns?
Yeah, I think so. I like Tillery coming out of Notre Dame. I thought he, had the potential to be a pretty solid pro. Obviously, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about defensive tackles, I think you have to be patient with them as much as, if not more than any position, just because of the growth that it takes to be ready at that position. But, I maybe coming to Cleveland would kind of put him in a better system, a more 4-down based system, get maybe a veteran option that the Browns could be looking for, defensive tackle, to add some veteranship, up alongside, obviously those guys we talked about, and Taven Bryan, who they signed in the offseason, kind of sticks out as maybe, kind of a dart throw, send a 5th-round pick to the Chargers for Tillery or whatever it would take to get him, and maybe you got a little something there.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Another question about the quarterback position for the Browns. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms.
Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about one of the Browns quarterbacks.
Hello, everyone. I want to know if Josh Dobbs, I've been watching his films, can be better than our second-string quarterback. He's got an arm, he can run. I don't see any reason why Josh Dobbs wouldn't be considered a starter at second string just because he's a bona fide kind of a rookie. Development. He has all the skills of a great quarterback, and I think that he would match. If we don't have a starter this year, we can have Josh Dobbs because Jacoby Brissett has not impressed me on all the films. Thank you for your time. You guys have a great day.
All right, as always, appreciate all of the voicemails. The one thing I would say about Josh Dobbs is he just doesn't have enough experience to turn over what would be a significant part of the season. 17 snaps, I believe, is what he has played in the NFL. Having said that, Tim, it's a guy that's incredibly bright. He is truly a rocket scientist. He has a degree in aerospace engineering from Tennessee. So I think he can figure out the nuances of any system. 17 snaps, though, you don't want to, if you have a team that you're thinking is a playoff team, you need a guy with more than 17 snaps.
Yeah, and Josh really never got an opportunity. Obviously, very limited track record in Pittsburgh. Obviously, with Ben Roethlisberger, you're not going to get many snaps at quarterback. Let's not forget also that the Steelers drafted Josh Dobbs in the 4th round back in 2017. 1 year later, they drafted Mason Rudolph in the 3rd round of the draft. So they kind of looked for a different quarterback 1 year after drafting Josh Dobbs, And I think maybe they felt that Rudolph had a better potential to be a future heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger, even though Rudolph has shown a little bit in his time, never really kind of grown to be what I think that Pittsburgh would have hoped he would have been as kind of a 3rd round flyer at a quarterback. But, there really hasn't been much of Josh Dobbs to see just because, he hadn't really gotten his opportunity. And I mean, coaches see a lot of these things in practice, and if you do well in practice, you necessarily earn more time. I think Josh, we would kind of have to see in a situation. Brissett would have to go down with an injury, I think, to really get an idea of what Josh Dobbs is. But I think right now, if you're the Browns and Deshaun Watson suspended, Jacoby Brissett just seems like a better option simply because he has a lot more experience than Josh Dobbs.
And the other thing is, and I don't mean to be, flippant with it, but the Steelers have Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, so they're trying to figure out the quarterback position. And they had Josh Dobbs. They know Josh Dobbs as well as anybody, and they went with Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. So I don't see Dobbs as being a significant player in being a starting quarterback at this point in his career. All right, this is from Pro Football Focus, ranking the top cornerbacks in press coverage from 2021 season. And when you look at it, the best, Trayvon Diggs, Ramsey is 2nd, Janoris Jenkins, Jackrabbit as they call him, is 3rd, Lattimore 4th, Denzel Ward checks in at 7th. And the other thing I would say is Ward got off to a slow start, so I think this is skewed a little bit that way. By the middle to the end of the year, you had to feel like Denzel Ward last year was as good as anybody in coverage.
Yeah, I hate to use this pun, but he was clearly pressing, in the first part of the season. I hate using that pun, but it's kind of true. Like you said, it seemed like he was thinking too much, trying too hard. And then once he kind of settled down, towards the middle of the season, you saw the Pro Bowl cornerback that Denzel Ward is. Obviously, the pick 6 he had against the Bengals in Cincinnati, one of the plays of the season for the Browns. obvious, and this defense obviously not always going to be a ton of man coverage, but as we know throughout Denzel Ward's career, he's been one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL in that situation, despite not having the size that guys like Trayvon Diggs has. I mean, Ward's sub 6 foot. The fact that he can play press coverage as often as he does is kind of a testament to his speed and his agility and his overall athleticism, that he can keep up with guys and make up that kind of ground if for whatever reason it gets beat or can't always physically match up with guys he's across in that press coverage situation.
All right, let's turn our attention to the offensive line. Mike Renner, Pro Football Focus, ranked the top 5. Eagles check in at number 1. Browns check in at number 2. You see Lions, Bucks, and Packers, 3, 4, and 5. The thing that is intriguing is the Browns line was so beat up a season ago. So you've got Nick Harris, new center. The guy I really want to see take a step forward is Jedrick Wills. After his rookie season, I thought, man, he's poised to get, up in the upper echelon of left tackles. And then he was trying to get healthy all last year, it seemed like.
Yeah, I think, what happened with Jed Wills was just kind of a microcosm of the entire Browns season. He injured his ankle in week 1, never looked quite the same the entire rest of the season. I know he tried to gut it out, and that's noble of him, but I think it's just kind of, the same thing with Baker Mayfield. I mean, sometimes you got to know when enough's enough, and you got to know maybe 60% of you is not always the best thing, especially when you're playing left tackle. You're playing that blind side protector position where if you're bad and you make a mistake, your quarterback's going to get hit pretty hard and everybody's going to know it. So obviously Wills needs to get healthy. He needs to kind of build off that promise that he showed in 2020. Jack Conklin's also got to get healthy. And then we got to see what Nick Harris is capable of. Obviously, they drafted him in 2020 to be the center of the future, showed flashes, when he had to start last season. But this is his opportunity. This is his chance to kind of, make a name for himself in the NFL. Got 2 years left on that rookie deal. It's his chance. And I think if he could play well, if he could do most of if he could be most of what J.C. Treader gave the Browns, the last few seasons, that this line is going to be as good as it's been, throughout since the 2018 season, when it's really started to kind of turn that corner.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see, and especially if the Watson suspension is of significant length, that line's going to be hugely important. All right, before we go to break, Dog Pound Daily, 3 reasons the Browns need to give Kareem Hunt a new contract. Came out over the weekend that he does want to be here. 3, they say hometown kid who wants to be here. 2, production is elite. And number 1, steps up in big moments. And when I look at those 2 and 1 more important, the other thing I would say, he's really versatile. And if he gives you a lot of options, particularly when you get inside that 20-yard line, if you can find a way to make it work financially that you don't think you're kind of hamstringing yourself, I think as long as you can have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb together, it's an advantage to the offense.
I agree with you. I mean, I know I'd be a little hesitant to do it just because, Kareem Hunt's not going to get any younger, but I think the way the Browns have kind of played this by platooning Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt the last few seasons has kind of kept both guys fresh. And the number one thing when it comes to running backs is they kind of have a certain threshold for carries in a career before they really start to kind of decline, and they're not as productive as they were early on. By not having one of those guys necessarily be a bell cow, by giving both guys opportunities, you're going to lengthen their careers a little bit, and that's a smart play, I think, by the Browns, what they've been able to do the last couple of seasons by having these two together, and they're obviously going to give you different things. And I think when it comes to the future of the position, I'm fascinated where it's going to go, because obviously Dearness Johnson, I don't know how much longer he is with the team, just because if he's good enough, he's going to get starters money somewhere else in about a year or two. And we will have to wait and kind of see what Jerome Ford is after the Browns took him in the 5th round. But I think if you can guarantee another good couple of years with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt together, I think if you can get that, you really still have one of the better backfields in the NFL and a threat to do things on offensively, as long as you at least have a reasonably solid quarterback.
Yeah, and you know what? Having too many good running backs on your 53-man roster and It's a great problem to have. I think 32 NFL teams sign up for that problem. Too many good running backs. All right, let's sign up for that for a few more years. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we will head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, plus a trade each team should make. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Deshaun Watson suspension.
Hi, Dan from Youngstown. Deshaun Watson, concerning this suspension or whatever you want to categorize it, all the other things that are going on as far as Kraft, the Redskins, or as you would call the Commanders now, Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, how Goodell handled all of this stuff or how the league handles it. My problem with all of this, okay, if you suspend Watson and they're saying year long or whatever, I just have a problem with all that. How can you do him like that and you did nothing to them? Your thought. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. And I get, Terry, I get what you're saying. The one thing to remember, the suspension, you can say all the other things. It ultimately comes in the hands of Roger Goodell. He can decide to go with what the judge says. He can change it. And Roger Goodell works for the owners. He works for Robert Kraft and Jerry Jones and Daniel Snyder. So as unfair as that is the reality of it, that, it's player versus owner. Commissioner works for the owners. So, I get the thought. I understand the argument that Players Association is going to argue that very line of thinking. I just don't know that it's going to, affect or change the outcome for Deshaun Watson. Tim, I don't know your thoughts, but that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the whole situation certainly messier, if we're being honest about it. I mean, it's an interesting defense the players are going to bring up. Why did, Kraft, Jerry Jones, and Daniel Snyder get absolutely nothing, not even a fine for those things, but Deshaun Watson could get suspended for what reportedly the NFL wants a full year. So, I mean, it could get messy. I don't know if it gets to the point of, suing the league messy in some situation, but it creates a weird double standard, I think. And we know, and there's no matter what happens with CBAs, the owners and the players are always going to have disagreements. They're going to come to the negotiating table whenever that happens in a few years. These things are always going to be remembered. So it's important to kind of have that type of stuff. But, it also begs the question for me, what does this suspension for an owner even do? The owner doesn't play in the games. It was suspended for not showing up. Like, is he not allowed to show up to the stadium or whatever? I maybe fines would be necessary in that situation, but
draft picks, take a draft pick or two away? That would have to be what it would be.
I understand that idea, but that would be very extreme. Obviously I know the owner is the most important part of the team because he makes the final say and has all those decisions. But you would have to go really extreme for that, and I highly doubt the NFL would do that. You would have to kind of find a middle ground if an owner was going to be punished and that sort of thing. And again, we have to remember, not just the NFL making this decision. That's a big reason why this is going to a third party. That's going to make the determination of whether this is suspendable and how much of a suspension Deshaun Watson will probably get before an appeal comes out.
All right, so this is kind of interesting. This is from the Bleacher Report. One trade each team should make before 2022 training camp starts. They say the Browns get Robbie Anderson and a 2023 fifth-round pick. The Panthers get Baker Mayfield. Yeah, I think I sign on for that. Yeah, Robbie Anderson is a little inconsistent as a wide receiver. He's a veteran guy. A fifth-round pick and Robbie Anderson for Baker, I'd probably do that.
It would make sense. I think, again, you talk about trying to strengthen up the receiver position. Really, the best way you're going to do that is with young guys. And when it comes to veterans in the room, obviously, Mari Cooper is the number one guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones going into his third season, and Anthony Schwartz into his second. There's other than Cooper, there's not a lot of veteranship. So maybe a guy named Anderson who's shown he can be productive in the NFL, has some speed to his game, some field stretching ability, would make some sense. So I'd be fascinated kind of where this goes. And the fact that it seems like the Browns are, according to all the reports, are getting more willing to pay more, at least half of Baker's contract, tells me we could be, in the final weeks of this whole kind of drawn out thing before a trade happens.
So NFL players entering a make or break year, according to CBS Sports. They say Baker Mayfield. And you see, it epitomizes how quickly things evolve in the NFL and change. That's why it's NFL not for long. I'm not sure this is really a make or break year for Baker Mayfield. I think he has to I think he will get another shot at being a starter somewhere, and that will be his make or break year. If he's a starter, you can make the case that this would be an important year for him. I think he gets at least one more shot at being a starting quarterback somewhere.
Yeah, I think 2022, for wherever he gets traded, is going to kind of be an audition year. Be productive, be solid, and he'll at least be worth, a 3-year extension, say at about 20 to 22 million. I'm just guessing as far as, what he would be kind of worth in that situation. If he goes to free agency, it'll be fascinating to kind of see where it ends up. But to me, I think this kind of brings up the most underrated thing that we don't talk about with this whole Baker Mayfield situation. To me, it's not just about the money he's owed. $18.86 million is a lot for a quarterback, but it's also an expiring contract, because you're going to have to make a determination on Baker Mayfield within one season. If you're the team that's trading for, whether or not you want to hold on to him, whether you want to extend him, franchise him, or just let him walk. And we know quarterbacks, usually it takes more than 1 year in a system to really determine, what their worth is and how they can really fit with a team. Because, anything can happen in one season. We've seen that already throughout Baker Mayfield's time with the Browns. So he's going to be playing. This is his best chance to get like a semi-reasonable money deal. Maybe not what Kirk Cousins got from the Vikings, but maybe something a little similar if he goes to Carolina or Seattle and has a solid season.
All right, before we let you go, Albert Breer from the Rich Eisen Show, talking about why it is important that Deshaun Watson be completely transparent with what he's told the league and the NFL. My response has been, I think he's been pretty transparent with the Browns. That's why you see they've come out and said they're firmly behind him. Here is what Albert Breer said on the Rich Eisen Show, why that transparency is so important.
If he wasn't forthright with the league, history tells us that the NFL comes down harder on guys who are not completely truthful with them. And the reason why is because the NFL lacks subpoena power. So if they want their investigations to have teeth, they have to create deterrence for people lying or misleading them, And so I think this thing for Deshaun personally gets considerably messier if he wasn't completely forthright and honest with the NFL and the Browns. And maybe the Browns won't come down on him because he's their guy now and everything else. But I certainly think the NFL will.
And Tim, I think that's 100% spot on. If he's been forthright he has a better chance at getting less. If he has not been forthright, the suspension is going to be a hammer.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a chance he gets a decent suspension no matter what. Obviously, it would be worse if he lies throughout the whole ordeal. It behooves him to tell the truth. It behooves everybody to tell the truth, because again, I mean, even just like from what we've seen in like investigations at all sports, particularly the NCAA, for example, why the lie is always going to come back and get you. You have just tell the truth, no matter how difficult it is going to be, no matter how much it implicates you. Just be honest. It serves you no purpose to lie. It really does nothing, and like Albert was saying, it's probably going to make the punishment worse. And if he tells the truth, I mean, he could still get punished, but maybe it reduces the chances there's a secondary punishment, that if there's a second suspension or even something way worse than that. So I mean, it just comes down to being honest and transparent throughout this whole thing. Again, it seems like he has, but we'll see where it kind of ends up, and we're not going to know the whole truth for a few years on this whole thing, I think.
Tim Bielik, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you read him, Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Jacob Roach from the Dog Pound Daily joins us, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back talking Browns.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns quarterback situation.
How you doing? It's Buddy in Baltimore, stuck in Baltimore. I have a very legitimate question, so I don't want anyone to think I'm being sarcastic or cynical. And that is, has Jacoby Brissett, has he ever played against a playoff team and played 4 good quarters of football where he outplayed the other team? Just curious. And my second question is a little more far-fetched. If Watson is suspended for the whole year and Jacoby just looks like he doesn't have it and there haven't been any suitors for Baker yet, is there any chance in the world you see the Browns sitting down with Baker and trying to play nice, where maybe hopefully both of them could admit that they both made some mistakes that they wish they could take back, and they ask him to be his own greatest agent and play the best ball he can for 1 year and possibly write his ticket for another team? Just wondering if there's even a inkling of a chance of such a thing. All right. Thank you. Have a good one. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's start with the back half of that as far as Baker Mayfield goes. I think it's beyond repair. I understand what you're saying. I think it would benefit Baker, but I just don't think there's any way that the Browns and Baker Mayfield will mend those fences that would allow him to play regular season quarterback for the Browns. With that, let's welcome in Jacob Roach from Dog Pound Daily. Jacob, first time on the show. Read your stuff all the time. Appreciate it. What do you think? Let's start with Baker. I don't see any way that they can mend those fences. It just doesn't appear that way. Initially, I thought there might be. It seems like that's way down the river and gone.
Hey, I just wanted to say, first off, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I do watch the show just about every day. I talked about this on my podcast and stuff a couple of weeks ago as the season was ending and stuff like that. It felt like, to me, not even without Deshaun Watson coming to Cleveland, I think both the Browns were done with Baker and Baker was done with the Browns. I just don't think at any point, even if it's not Watson, maybe it was Garoppolo or somebody else, I just don't think that either side wanted him to be in Cleveland this season.
Yeah, and the first part of that, Brissett was part of a playoff team, didn't play in the game. It was Phillip Rivers' team. So he really hasn't played significant amount of time. I know you've written an article about this, so let's go into that. What does it look like if it's Jacoby Brissett for all 17 games? So in other words, Watson gets suspended for an entire year, and it's got to be Jacoby Brissett.
It's going to look a lot like 2021. The offense will look a lot like the clunky offense that we saw last season. I was looking over this because I was interested. Brissett has 3 career fourth quarter comebacks or game-winning drives. He's only been a starter for 2 full seasons, but he's only got the 3 situations. If you compare his numbers, because this is what a lot of people say, is Brissett doesn't have to be good; he has to be better than injured Baker was last year. If you look at the numbers from Brissett from last year, he played in 11 games and 5 starts. He had a 62% completion as opposed to Baker's 60.5 last year. He had 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions compared to Baker's 17-13. So if you look at his career, he's only got 17 interceptions. He's also only got 36 touchdowns. So you're going to see a lot of what you saw last year. That being said, that team almost made the playoffs. They won 8 games, and 3 of those games were started by Case Keenum and Nick Mullins, who are the definition of game-managing quarterbacks. And they almost won all 3 of them. Mullins almost wins that crazy game against the Raiders. And so I think this team is better than the 2021 Browns were, minus the quarterback situation. So I think the ceiling is 10 or 11, but they're somewhere between 8 to 10. I think if Brissett's the guy for 17 games.
And the one thing is Brissett's MO is he usually doesn't hurt you. He usually doesn't turn the ball over. So I think Kevin Stefanski would likely not ask him to do some of the things that he was asking Baker Mayfield to do last year as well.
Yeah, I think that it becomes even simpler. I mean, I know at times that we were very frustrated last year with the simplicity of the game, and they wanted to know where the boot action and play action was that Baker thrived in. I just don't think he was physically able. He has such a violent throwing motion that he just couldn't, with the labrum tear and the broken bone, he just couldn't, contort his body in that sort of way. I think you will finally get what you want, though. I think you'll see Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb on the field together a lot, because that's the only recipe for success. Brissett's not going to make a ton of mistakes, and he doesn't push the ball vertically a lot, but he can. So you could see a team that just it's simple, a lot of run plays, dink and dunk, and shot plays. It's got enough talent, but it will make you bang your head off the wall sometimes.
All right, let's turn our attention to the wide receiver room. A lot of people think that maybe they need another veteran, being the Browns. They don't seem inclined to do that. Young guys, other than Amari Cooper. When you look at this room, what do you see? What are your thoughts on the wide receiving group?
It's a lot of projection. It's a lot like the defensive tackle room, where there are some dudes in there that have some reason to believe that they can do something. I think if you look at raw talent, there's probably more raw talent than last year, but it's a lot of, DPJ, if he can settle into that role, and I love Donovan Peoples-Jones, I'm a very, very big fan of his. If he can settle into that role in the second, in that you just need someone like Anthony Schwartz to just do the one thing we need him to do, and that's stretch the field vertically. And David Bell is a quicker Jarvis Landry. I think he goes up and makes those contested catches. He can get more vertical than people think he can. And he dropped 1 pass in the offseason programs, and he admitted to it because nobody was there when it happened. But he was like, "Oh yeah, dude, I did that one time," which I thought was kind of funny. But I mean, there's a battle for the 5th and 6th spot down there at the end, I think. But this room is a lot of projection, a lot of raw talent. But, I do like what Kevin Stefanski was able to do last year. He schemed open wide receivers a lot that were not that talented. There was a lot of wide receivers that, because of the scheme and the route and the play design, were able to get open, and they just had, inconsistencies with their hands and with the quarterback play, which really held it back. But I think that this is the coaching staff that could tap into some of the potential in that room, and I think the potential, at least, is through the roof.
All right, another article that you've written, talking with Jacob Roach, Dawg Pound Daily. Take us through Mike Hartley Jr., just a guy to watch in training camp, what you like about him, what you've seen in the offseason program.
It's really funny because there's a guy every year, and it ends up being Malik McDowell last year, who you kind of knew who he was when they got him, but you weren't really sure what was good. The only reason you knew who McDowell was because he hadn't played in all those years. And there's a name that you start hearing. Cameron Justice has tweeted a few times about Mike Hartley Jr., and that really brought him to my attention. It's like, let me go back and look. So I went back this weekend and watched a bunch of his film at Miami. He was an undrafted rookie. He's a 4.46 guy. It's very interesting because you're looking for who outside of Schwartz is really, in Cooper to an extent, is going to stretch the field vertically. And he's a slot guy. They need a slot. They lost Jarvis Landry. They do not have a guy that is a true, pure slot player. David Bell will probably spend a lot of time in there, but that's what he did at Miami. And when you turn it on, man, there's a faster straight line speed Jarvis Landry. He is going to get 6 yards, 7 yards, play in, play out. He's consistent. He's going to catch the football. He can make some guys miss after the catch and get some yards after catch. But he's kind of that guy that understands, the defense is going to give me 8 yards. So I'll take the 8-yard gain on 2nd and 12 and make it a 3rd and manageable, or I'll just move the sticks with a 5-yard gain on 3rd down. He has the ability to go big play, but he's just that reliable. Like, he's got some David Bell in his game too. He's a little bit faster, where it's just, if you need a play, you can find him and expect him to, make something happen.
Jacob Roach from Dawg Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about the Deshaun Watson situation, plus 3 remaining free agents that could seal the deal for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. So late last week, Charles Robinson of Yahoo wrote an article that quoted one of the investigating officers in the Deshaun Watson situation as saying she felt that a crime was committed in her deposition. Kim Ogg is the Harris County District Attorney. That's the county that Houston is in. She was on the Mike Metzer podcast of Sports and the Law, and here's her opinion on that opinion of the investigating officer.
The officer certainly is entitled to her opinion. It's just not evidence.
And I have one follow-up on that. This is something I was curious about, Kim. If hypothetically a grand jury had chosen to indict, is that, there's obviously the deposition part, but if someone like that, a police investigator, were called to testify, is that kind of evidence admissible?
Oh, no, it's fair game for cross-examination, though. I would imagine that somebody might have a lot of questions for any officer who said they started by, quote, believing. Of course, we want to support rape victims. Of course, we want to be sensitive to individuals who claim sexual assault. But our own bias and conflicts of interest based on whatever they're based on are always fair game for the other side to challenge us on, and the lens through which something was looked at. That's why opinions aren't evidence.
And Jacob, so what Kim Dawg is talking about is the investigative officer said they start by assuming the victim is telling the truth, which would incriminate the person that they're saying it against, which is obviously the complete opposite of what happens in trial. Again, investigation and trial, not the same. But Kim Dawg makes a really good point. This officer's testimony that everybody was all up in arms about isn't evidence. It's an opinion.
Yeah, and I think Charles Robinson's piece that talked about it, I thought was a really well-written piece because it felt like it brought everything from both sides of the arguments. And he kind of talked about that, the thing that she was talking about in that clip about cross-examination, because if you look at some of the questions that Rusty Hardin kind of lobbed back at her, was he kind of got to asked her, well, so was there a bias? Like, you started out believing he was guilty, and she said yes. So I think that's really interesting, that the way it was kind of put out there, because the way we've been dealing with this case is every time something comes out, we just don't know what to do. And we're like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And I'm really glad that that was put out there, that like, hey, this is in a court of law anyway. This is what this means, and it's not much.
All right, so let's go back to football now. 3 remaining free agents that could seal the deal. This is from Dog Pound Daily. Cornerback Joe Hayden, you see number 3, Steelers free agent though. Wide receiver T.Y. Hilton, a veteran guy, not sure what he's got left. And then defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson. Let's go through those, see if you think any of those make a lot of sense for the Browns. Let's start with Hayden.
I like Hayden. I was really crushed the way they did him at the end of his tenure. That was also led to them being 0-16, and I don't think it was a coincidence. But anyway, Joe Hayden, if the money's right, you can never have enough corners, especially if you have an injury. You have 2, we have 3, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and Greedy Williams, that over their careers in the NFL and in college have missed time just about every season, whether it's major time or not. So you could, I don't think it's likely, because I think with Martin Emerson and AJ Green, they feel pretty good about that room. But if he's like going to take a veteran minimum deal, yeah, look, sign me up at any. It's a passing league. You got to shut it down somehow.
All right, what about Hilton? We've talked about the young guys in the previous segment. Last thing in the world I think they want to do is take opportunities away from them early, like in camp and preseason.
If it is so apply for Sheldon Richardson as well. If they're going to add a wide receiver or a defensive tackle, it's going to be during the preseason or after an injury. Because I don't think it's going to come in camp. Like you said, the opportunities, they want to give them to everybody. If they add a wide receiver, because I love the idea of adding a wide receiver, but I think it's like a Will Fuller type. I think they just look for a field stretcher. And I mean, that's not T.Y. Hilton in his day, whatever he's got left is still probably great as your 4th wide receiver. But is he going to come in and be your 4th wide receiver, or does he want Amari Cooper level snaps? I just don't see where he fits into what they want to do. But I totally agree with the article in the sense that Sheldon Richardson would be awesome, and adding a wide receiver or a defensive tackle would probably seal the deal for me, I think, yeah.
Jacob Roach, great stuff. Appreciate the time, and you are welcome back anytime. Good stuff, Jacob. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, Jacob Roach, make sure you read him. Dog Pound Daily. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guests, Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, and Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Little bit of an NBA draft preview coming up tomorrow. NBA draft is Thursday. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock on Sports for CLE.